Hello everybody. Today I will be just making a little showcase here of some custom Magic the Gathering cards I've been working on the side, as well as with some input and play testing from my friends. I have a lot of custom cards for my friends and I's play group here, but these cards here were designed with clues, foods, and treasures in mind because it's one of my favorite themes, archetypes, mechanics in Magic the Gathering. So I'm gonna just be showcasing cards that mainly were designed with these three in mind. And we're just gonna get started here with a card I kind of made. It's just a pet card for myself. My favorite archetype in Magic is Sultai, or my favorite color combination. So I made a Sultai commander that does junk, as they called it in Modern Horizons. Which just kind of worries about tokens, especially artifact tokens. So a Sultai junk commander, and then I gave it a red and a white activated ability, just so it can be all 5 colors. And because in Modern Horizons 2, red and white did artifact things, I just want to talk about a little bit of my thought process of making the card. Love dragons, so I made it a dragon with this big horde here in the art, and Viseron after one of the dragons from Game of Thrones, and then Scrap Tyrant, because these are like scraps, you know. And it's also a reference to Hellkite Tyrant, who wants you to have a lot of artifacts. I made him basically a blocker because I don't want it to be a very aggressive deck, so I made the commander less aggressive. And I had it so you can pitch a card, you can basically scrap a card from your hand, and you get some junk. You get some junk out of it. If you throw something away, some junk accumulates. I made it at random though, so it's less to be planned around and less to combo off of. And then his ability down here, I'm really proud of. So Modern Horizons 2 has this card, Foundry Helix, for 1, a red and a white. It's basically a lightning helix, but it kind of wants you to sacrifice artifacts. So I use it in a Boros modular deck. But once you sacrifice an artifact, deals 4, gain 4 for 1, a red and a white. So on the commander, I gave it a weaker version, made it so you had to sacrifice an artifact for the cost, which just allows you to use these for other things if maybe you don't have any clues you want to draw cards with, or if you're not really looking to gain life or anything. It just allows them to be 5 color identities. You can just make a good stuff junk commander. So our next card is inspired by the Reddit user Aryatho, Arytho, Aryatho. He makes a custom commander every day, and he made a teamer commander called the Scrapmonger, and I took inspiration from that to kind of make this commander here. So it's a 5 color artifact creature commander. He is also a clue, a food, and a treasure. So if you sacrifice him for something, he'll still trigger a couple effects for you. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, he explores. So you flip the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it in your hand. Otherwise, you can leave it on top, put it in the graveyard, and it gets a +1/+1 counter. And then whenever he enters battlefield or attacks, investigate, make a food, make a treasure. So simple. He makes you junk, you use the junk, he goes looking for it. And so he's the Scrapmonger, and he's looking through all this junk here. And when I sacrifice this artifact and it goes to the graveyard, he goes exploring because something new came in. And I just like the flavor that implies, that whenever I throw something away, he goes running after it to try to make himself better. And I thought it'd be a cool, different option to run in the command slot instead of Viseron. Next, I made a little mini cycle of cards, which are a legendary artifact creature of one of these token types. And my friends are cool with having non-creature commanders. So Copernicus Jones, I found out, is an actual robot detective, and I was like, well, he looks for clues, so I'll just use art of him. And I gave them all affinity for clues, so as you get later in the game, you can keep recasting them. I gave each of these 3 an ability that when you when you do what their associated token does, you can kind of do it a little better when on the battlefield. And then I gave them an ability of their related token, but they kind of do a little better. So for him, when you sacrifice him, you still get to do this as far as I understand. So that's Copernicus Jones. He does clues. To read him for a second. And we have Weenie the Slumpkin. He's a food, affinity for food. And if an ability of an artifact you control causes you to gain life, you gain twice as much life instead. So really your foods are giving you 6 life. But Weenie also lets you draw a card when he dies. And he also has affinity for food. So you can sort of build your advantage with it and you make your food more useful. And this is the Black Pearl from Pirates of the Caribbean. I made it a vehicle, has affinity for treasures, and it allows you, when you sacrifice any permanent for mana, you get to add an additional mana of color. So the Black Pearl, it says you sacrifice it for 2, but it gives you an additional 3rd, so you can sack this for for any combination of 3 colors. And I kind of like flavor that you can sacrifice the Black Pearl for Grixis mana, which are also the color of pirates, and pirates like treasure. So this is a neat treasure commander, IMO, and they're just a little mini cycle, because I also have a treasure, a food, and a clue deck of these colors, so I sometimes will run these in the command slot. Up next, we have a card that really cares about having a lot of food happening. So this is the Feasting Table. When it's battlefield, you make a food token. I believe this was inspired by a card I found on Reddit. I just changed the templating a little bit more to something my friends and I find fairer and more useful. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you put a course counter on this. Then if you have more course counters, if you have more food than you have course counters, you get to draw a card. Otherwise, you make a food. So it helps you, when you get a bunch of foods, it helps you keep the card draw going, because that's something I find I'm missing in my food deck. And then for the same price as using a food up, you can use a course counter off of this, and everybody gains 3 life, because you're all eating this meal together. And it just lets you kind of gain some of the food in some of the benefits of food, even if you're running low or something. And I made it a food too, in case that ever becomes relevant in effect you're doing. Up next are 2 cards that serve a similar purpose. I'll talk about this first one first. It's the Fires of Automation. I made it a legendary enchantment, and for 2 colorless, blue and a red, if you would create 1 or more non-creature tokens, you make twice that many instead. So it's a slightly powered down Parallel Lives. I made it legendary, so it's harder to clone and keeps it more in control, because red and blue still like to make tokens, so I wanted them to have some kind of doubling effect. And so my friends and I all agree that this is good enough for the level of Magic we play, and that way you can still run some token doubling in artifact decks, even if you're not running green. And then the next card is the Utopia Forge. Now we think this is a little more powerful, but 5 mana artifacts tend to be pretty powerful, so we think this is also fairly okay. Pushed, strong, but fairly okay. So for 3 and 2 colorless, we get a legendary artifact. If you would create 1 or more artifact tokens, create twice that many instead. So it's kind of doing the same thing. This one's non-creature, this one's artifact tokens. So they're not doing the exact same thing, but they're similar. And then for 8 mana, you can copy an artifact you control. Just so that it's never completely dead and you have a nice mana sink for the late game. And up next, we have this card here. It's Explorer's Stash, 2 mana legendary artifact. And whenever you create a treasure token, put a stash counter on this. And whenever you sacrifice treasure, you remove a counter. And then you can tap this for a colorless equal to the number of stash counters on it. This just gives you a way to get value from your treasures without using them all up. So you have to have the treasure in order to use this. And if you sack all your treasures, this becomes kind of useless. It just rewards you for having a lot of treasures and allows you to hoard them a little bit more without them being useless. Because they make colored mana, but sometimes you just need a lot of colorless. We think this is a fine card, especially because it doesn't make a treasure token itself. And the last card I'm going to show off today here is Investment Post. It's an homage to Trading Post, and it really is. If you run through all three of its abilities, you will come out with an additional card, an additional life, and a little bit of additional mana. So you can just tap it to make a clue. So, you know, tap it, you get a clue. Okay, that's fine. Well, so let's say untap it. Next turn, sack your clue, draw a card. Well, you discard a card, you get a food. So we have this food token. It's our next turn. We untap this. We use our clue to gain 3 life. Well, we have 3 life. We tap this, and then bam, we get a treasure token. So it is still some form of investment. It's nothing crazy, but I think it's just a neat way to, you know, to just to represent these three as an homage to Trading Post and all of its abilities. And I do think the art's cool. It kind of looks almost Star Warsian. So these are my custom cards for the Junk archetype. And thank you for watching, and let me know any questions, comments, or concerns. The templating on these probably isn't perfect. My friends and I know the intentions of all of them, so they're good enough for us. But if you have any other cool ideas too, be sure to drop them in the comments below. Leave a like if you liked. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.